Hello, this is TGC Requiem with a deck tech. This is blue-black Days Undoing Control. This is kind of a fun deck. I don't know how competitive it is yet, but it's certainly fun to play. The goal of this deck is to execute a 2-card combo. The first card being Notion Thief, which has flash, and if opponent would draw a card except for the first one, he or she draws in each of his or her draw steps. Instead, that player skips that draw, and you draw a card. The other half of the combo is Days Undoing, which is each player shuffles his or her hand and graveyard into his or her library, then draws 7 cards if it's your turn and the turn. So the goal here is to end step your opponent with Notion Thief, and then on your turn after attacks, not always, but presumably after attacks, Days Undoing your opponent, at which point you guys would each draw 7 cards, except Notion Thief would in fact allow you to draw your 7 cards and your opponent's 7 cards, giving you 14 cards to their 0 cards. Ideally, that's going to put you in a strong enough position to then win the game with beats from Notion Thief and Snapcaster Mage, and or your Tassigers, Gurmag Anglers, and Creeping Tar Pits. The shell of the deck is just a blue-black control deck, and part of the benefit of that is with the blue-black control deck, you're actually just kind of you're just kind of playing a natural game your opponent would expect. Your opponent's going to expect you to just play a land and pass. And so they hopefully are not expecting it when you drop Notion Thief at the end of their turn and followed up with Days Undoing to start your turn. The mana base is pretty much just blue-black. Most of it comes in upright. I mean, you have Darkslick Shores, which come in upright early. Drowned Catacombs come in upright as long as you contain an island or you have an island or a swamp, and we contain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 swamps or islands in the deck, not including Urborg, which makes every other card a swamp or island as well, or a swamp as well. Creeping Tar Pit, again, unblockable. Manland. And then we run 1 Cavern of Souls, and I run the 1 Cavern. I don't know if it's necessary or not, but it's to essentially stick your Notion Thieves or your Snapcasters against your control opponent. So the goal there is that you name human. The only other creature in the deck, well, I shouldn't say that. First of all, human will allow you to use Snapcaster Mage, Notion Thief, or Tassiger. You could also say wizard, which would get you Snapcaster and Vendilion Click, but human is the plan for Cavern. Again, I'm not 100% certain it's ideal, but it's useful. We do also run 1 Quicken, just as kind of like a techie trick card, but the next sorcery card you cast this turn can be cast as though it had flash. The primary concept for that is actually Languish, to be able to instant speed board wipe. Languish I find is very good in this deck, especially after you've Days Undoing. Your opponent may be able to get 1 more attack in against you after that. But then when you draw your 14 cards, you often draw Languish and can just wipe the board with the Languish at that point. And again, Languish does not destroy or will not kill your Tassigers or Gurmag Anglers. Excuse me. We run a 3rd one in the side as well when we really need that. Quicken can also do the Days Undoing in the middle of your opponent's turn, so you could quicken into Days Undoing on your opponent's turn. It does not end your opponent's turn like it ends your turn, but if you have a Notion Thief, it will still take all their cards, and worst case you can just mess up the cards in hand if you were to say do it while something's on the stack and they can't play other cards in their hand. The other thing is, and this is typically more useful post, what's the word I'm looking for here? Post Days Undoing combo. But then they draw that one card. Well, some decks, like Tron, might be able to bring down one really powerful threat, or Amulet Bloom could bring down, a Primetime Still, something really powerful. And so Quicken can be done during the draw step or at the end of the draw step to Thoughtseize or Inquisition card away. Again, not saying it's the best, but it's something that can be done. Thought Scour, run one Thought Scour to help feed the big delve guys, but primarily we're on Serum Visions just to make sure we kind of have the right cards in hand. Disfigure just helps against aggro and some man lands. And then we have a pretty standard counter suite with Mana Leaks, Remand, and then a Deprive. The removal's a little interesting. So Dismember, go for the Throw, which obviously is not good against artifacts, but is less mana intensive. Geth's Verdict is just because there's obviously sometimes creatures that are hard to get to. Maybe protection, protection from colors like blue or black, or hexproof, etc. I actually like the one Geth's Verdict and another one on the side. Just from some of the test matches I played, I felt like in many matches I was like, man, if I had just had a Geth's Verdict here, I would be alright. And so I brought those in. Only time will really tell if they're worth it or not. Victim of the Night is actually really pretty good in this deck because it's fairly easy to end up having black compared to a lot of other decks where you're trying to balance three colors, especially the decks that I play. And then Dismember, which is oldie but goodie, and obviously Dismember is good in a black shell deck. So that's the main deck. Sideboard, basically I just had a strong feeling the deck would be bad against burn. It is a struggle. I don't know that it's bad against burn, but it is a tough match. You really got to make sure you're using your counter magic appropriately. But yeah, Dragon's Claw's in there for that. Hurkyl's Recall for affinity. Decks that would use that. When we want to get more counter magic in, we have Dispel and Deprive. Hibernation is to help against the green aggro decks, just return all green permanents to their owner's hands. That can actually be really good leading into a Notion Thief Stays Undoing as well. Did that once, and then they lost all the cards in hand, which was pretty great. Torpor Orb is for, among other things, primarily Splinter Twin. Grafdigger's Cage for the aggro decks like Elves that just use Collected Company, things like that, where I can't keep up with all the counter. I can't counter everything, basically. Spellskite is just catch-all. May need a second one even, but the fact that I brought in Geth's Verdicts makes me feel like Spellskite's not needed everywhere. Surgical Extraction to try and remove combo pieces. An extra Languish, and then Counter Squall and Shadow of Doubt. Counter Squall is just kind of a hard non-creature counter. Maybe it doesn't have to be Counter Squall versus like Negate or something like that, but the fact that we're already blue-black makes it easy to cast that one. And Shadow of Doubt helps against decks like Tron and anything where you're searching. So, anywho, this is Blue-Black Days Control. We'll get a match in and see how it goes.